Everybody's ready for the next Spider-Verse sequel, but it seems like it might be really far away. Let's take a couple minutes to talk about the Trouble Three-Peat, what's going on behind the scenes, and why one Hollywood insider is saying the whole movie has been scrapped. Now, as many of you know, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse actually swung into theaters last June, and its sequel, Beyond the Spider-Verse, was supposed to land this March. Now, we heard early on the film was going to be removed from the schedule because it was far from ready. And there was a lot of behind-the-scenes drama with animators who were super unhappy with the deadlines for the sequel, long working hours, and honestly just being kind of dragged through the mud up to the last moment. We still don't have a release date for Beyond the Spider-Verse, but if it's hitting theaters next summer, we probably would have heard something about it now. The studios like to grab their dates whenever they can, and it's very unlikely Sony is planning on a release next year without naming a date. Now, to be fair, at this point, 2026 seems like a pretty surefire bet for the animated sequel. But there's some interesting updates via Jeff Snyder in his newsletter that seem to indicate that's really unlikely too. Now, what's being reported is that they are hearing that it's extremely unlikely Sony would want to release the animated movie in the same year as the new MCU Spider-Man movie. As many of you know, we just found out they got a director in Destin Daniel Cretton. It goes into production in early 2025, meaning it should hit theaters in 2026. And Sony has a strategy of trying to stagger these releases, which helps prop up the annual profits and numbers. Now, at this point, it seems like 2027 is more likely for that reason alone. But Jeff Snyder added a pretty interesting detail, and it might indicate 2027 might even be too soon if we ever get to see it at all. What he is saying is that Sony has scrapped most of the Beyond the Spider-Verse movie for creative reasons, and because of that decision, the movie will unlikely debut before 2027 given the time required for animation. Now, he goes on to say that the Beyond the Spider-Verse team was pretty much taken aback by the change in direction, but that he was told now they have much more time to work on the sequel, and it's important to all parties involved that they stick the landing on the final chapter of the Oscar-winning franchise. Now, this comes in combination with news that Lord and Miller stepped away from the Amazon projects. They were basically set to lead the Spider-Man universe on Amazon Prime, with Spider-Noir and Silk Spider Society being the first two chapters. Shortly after Nicolas Cage was cast for Spider-Noir, Silk Spider Society was cancelled, and then we heard Lord and Miller were basically leaving those lead creative positions due to conflicts with the production house. Now, throw all this together into a giant stew, and it has me thinking there's some big problems behind the scene between Lord and Miller and Sony. And with almost 3.5 or 4 years before the next sequel comes our way, I think fans should be, really concerned about the future of this franchise. It is distinctly possible in my mind that Lord and Miller could exit the project, leaving Sony to bring on a new creative team. As many of you know, when Sony swings and misses, wow, they are big misses. And we only have to look to Morbius, Amazing Spider-Man 2, or Madam Web to find some films that really fail to connect with audiences, and in some cases cost Sony a boatload of money at the box office. Now, obviously, the behind-the-scenes details we are not 100% privy to, but if you read the tea leaves here, it's pretty clear there is a lot going on between Sony and its creatives, and this whole situation could blow up in their face, leaving fans never really getting the ending to the Spider-Verse trilogy that we all were due. This totally reminds me of when James Gunn exited Marvel, and it seemed like he wasn't going to do Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Honestly, I can't imagine that franchise being closed out by anybody else. It was a total home run, and I think only James Gunn could have pulled that off. I think Lord and Miller are critical to this franchise, and should they make an exit, honestly guys, I think the final film is likely to be more than a little subpar. How this ultimately works out, well, at this point, we're going to have to wait and see.